Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
So, hello, welcome. This is Ed and Deb Shapiro at Going Out of Your Mind. This is an exciting time in our country. We're in the middle of a heated political election with the first presidential debate tomorrow, and this is probably one of the most important times in political history. Politics seems to be steeped in a lot of misguided information, ignorance, even unawareness, but finally, we have a congressman who is bringing mindfulness and awareness not only into politics but into every single aspect of American life. And his extensive imagination includes education, the Army, hospitals, even prisons. So, our guest today is Ohio Democrat Congressman Tim Ryan.
And just before he goes on, I do want to say that Congressman Tim Ryan is a Democrat from Ohio. Right now, Ohio, from what everybody hears, is the key to the election. So let us joyfully say hi to Tim Ryan.
Hi, Tim.
It's great to be with you guys.
I think it's good, yeah.
Hi. So you're one of Ohio's youngest state congressmen because you were elected in 2002 and are now in your fifth term. That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, we got started a little early. I was elected to the state Senate in 2000 and then U.S. Congress in 2002. So just a lot of serendipity and a lot of good luck along the way.
Well, certainly for so many of us. I mean, it is important times. So many lives are dependent on some sanity. You know, I have to say there are times I feel it's not like I'm a Democrat or a Republican. I want some sanity. If we could have anyone who can come forward and really care about the people. And that's why I feel so strong about Obama, and I feel strong about you. I do want to start with something, and I know I might be jumping the gun, but I would love to see you in that direction towards being President of the United States. That's what we need.
Well, it looks like I'm going to have a lot more gray hair if that's the case, huh? Because that's what happens, and we see that.
Well, that's not too bad because I'm bald.
All right. Well, there you go.
You could be the first bald president. Why not?
Well, there you go. Right. There's always a first, right? But
I have one particular. I have one particular question. It's basically that it's a strong one. You're a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and yet you are the author and the brilliant author behind Mindful Nation. So it's sort of like, people who are really in Mindful Nation, people who are aware and all, how do you balance the two of, the armed service? We always think this is where, people want to create war or something. Can you enlighten us on that?
Well, that's a very interesting part of this whole thing. And, quite frankly, in my experience, and I'm not a mindfulness teacher or anything, I do have my own personal practice for a few years now. But part of it is really facing conflict and facing the things that you may not like, whether it's about yourself or your country or a relationship you're in. It's a lot of times has to do with being able to deal with that. And, I get this question a lot on the book tour and everywhere about, how do you reconcile this? And really, to me, there's so many different aspects of our military. There are young kids that go in that are looking to serve their country and do good things, sometimes put in very precarious situations that they ultimately and sometimes don't know how to deal with, and they're in it for all the right reasons. And I think, mindfulness to me, as far as my first introduction into trying to get it into the military and to veterans is to help them. First on the front end with a program that Liz Stanley's running out of Georgetown that's called Mind Fitness, and that's really to increase resiliency for the soldiers and Army officers who are going in, and people who are really on the front lines, is to try to give them some mental resiliency, so when they go into these difficult situations, they don't get worse. We have Marines, for example, who one day are in a firefight, and they are doing their duty, and their lives are on the line. They may lose a couple of their buddies along the way. The next day, they're in a patrol in a civilian village. And I think where mindfulness can come in and the mind fitness training can come in is to say, hey, this happened yesterday. It was a very difficult situation. But if I bring too much of that into today, if I'm not in the present moment, if I haven't figured out how to maybe deal with some of that stuff, today can actually be very tragic, and there can be civilians involved in this. So how do we train our soldiers? We're not in it, and I have no interest in teaching people how to be better killers, but it's about how they can handle these different situations. And what we're finding out, too, is that if you help them in their training, build up their resiliency, do their mind fitness, have a mindfulness practice, that they actually bounce back better from some of the trauma that they may face. And so, with all these soldiers coming back, the high rates of suicide among veterans who are returning, this can be very, very helpful for them, and ultimately help us reduce some of our costs that we're going to be spending over the next couple of decades on veterans' health care.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant.
So we're just, for our listeners to know, we're talking to Congressman Tim Ryan, who is the author of A Mindful Nation, How a Simple Practice Can Help Us Reduce Stress, Improve Performance, and Recapture the American Spirit, which I think is a glorious title, and he's enlisting professionals of all types in a quiet revolution to take up mindfulness. Now, what do you mean by a quiet revolution, Tim?
Before you say that, I love that. What was that, Deb? You said something?
To recapture the American.
Recapture, to think that we actually have to recapture it is mind-blowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so what is a quiet revolution, Tim, and how is that mindfulness?
Well, it's obviously a play on words that the practice of mindfulness is about really quieting your mind and appreciating the silence that exists sometimes, and how that can open your awareness up to what you're thinking, what other people are thinking, what's really going on in the present moment. I talk a lot about how athletes are in the zone, and how mindfulness basically is a way to get yourself in the zone. We see peak performers and we say, wow, how do they do that? And they're really in the zone. Their mind and their body are in the same place. They're synchronized, and they're in the zone. And I think there's a quietness that when you watch the Olympics, for example, a few weeks ago, or you watch a high-performing athlete, they're actually coming out of a silent place. And so that's one way of talking about the quiet revolution, but also that it's happening under the radar screen right now. This is not happening in a way that is on the nightly news or that everyone's talking about. I mean, it's happening more and more that people are actually getting the word out, but really it's under the radar screen. And when you read A Mindful Nation, you'll see the scope of how this is happening from coast to coast, from UCLA to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to University of Miami in Florida, Amherst, Harvard. I mean, it's happening everywhere, the Cleveland Clinic. But it's happening under the radar screen, and so that's that this is kind of a quiet revolution, but I don't know how quiet it's going to be in the next few years, because it's really grown in popularity, and I think people are really looking for something to help them, and so a lot more people are open to this. So I like the phrase "quiet revolution," though. I think it's really cool.
So how did you first get interested? Because this is a big jump from being a politician, and not many of them make that jump. How did you first get interested?
Well, I think it's been years and years of dealing with and just living my own life, and I talk about this somewhat in the book. I grew up in a Catholic family with an Italian Catholic mother and two Italian Catholic grandparents that prayed the rosary a lot. and that was kind of my real first introduction into the contemplative life. And I remember my grandparents praying the rosary, not for show, not just in the rosary group. I remember as a boy riding, they lived a couple blocks from me, and I remember riding my bike over their house in the summertime, and I'd just surprise them, and they would be in the living room hanging out praying the rosary. So it was something they did really to center themselves, to say their prayers, to ground themselves. And then later I had a priest friend of mine teach me centering prayer, which is a Christian-based meditation that is an amazing practice. Father Thomas Keating is a big proponent, has wrote several books on it. It's just a beautiful, beautiful meditation technique. And then, I was just going crazy. I was in the campaign mode. I was working. I was in Congress at a young age. I was helping the Democrats take the House back in 2004, 5, and 6. Traveling the country, raising money, going to college campuses, campaigning for candidates, and we won. And I then got on the Appropriations Committee, which is one of the 2 or 3 really powerful committees in Congress, and that added responsibilities, but yet continued to travel and everything else. And then Ohio, as you mentioned earlier on, Ed, it's a big state, and it's always a swing state. So I was traveling around Ohio campaigning for our gubernatorial candidate, who was a good friend of mine, and then later on President Obama. And it was about the middle of 2008. At 35 years old, I thought, I'm going to be burned out by the time I'm 40. And this is really no way to go through life, just being a fried congressman who's, saying whatever needs to be said or doing whatever needs to be done. And I knew I didn't have a meditation practice. I did on and off. I prayed the rosary a little bit when I was younger, then the centering prayer, and on and off different types of meditation. But I knew I was better when I did it. I knew I could concentrate more. I knew I could, I was nicer. I was kinder. I was smarter. I just felt like it benefited me. My stress level was a lot lower. It benefited me in so many different ways. So that summer I said, you know what, I'm going to jumpstart my meditation practice. And I got online and I started looking for retreats. And I found a retreat, 5 days, that John Kabat-Zinn did called The Power of Mindfulness. And it was primarily
wrote a book with John, 2 books.
What's that?
We wrote 2 books with John Kabat-Zinn and Father Thomas Keating.
Yeah.
Well, then you're...
Our book is Be the Change, How Meditation Can Transform You and the World.
Unbelievable. Well, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
We're talking on similar lines here, but obviously those, our listeners may not be, still somewhat maybe stupefied that a politician could actually be interested in meditation. And I love the fact that you first sort of became aware of it through,
the right
Christianity,
people.
Roman Catholic, through the whole traditional approach, showing that really it doesn't matter what religion you are. It's not about religion. It's about being aware.
Right.
And wait, we have a commercial coming on, and we'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Well, before we go, let me just make it clear that we will be back in just a few minutes.
A few seconds, we hope.
Yeah, we were actually going to okay. So thank you, Tim. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
We love you.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Angie Lyle, president and founder of Lyle Style Productions. Lyle Style Productions provides video production services and social media management services. We create content that supports your message, broadcast your message, monitor the conversations about your message, engage your audience on your behalf, and provide detailed statistical data that can help you to fine-tune your message based on what your audience is looking for. We're always learning about new and innovative ways to use social media, and we keep you up to date on all of the emerging trends available to broadcast your message. Whether you need a consultation or a whole team to manage your social media presence, we can help. Contact us today, and we'll make sure your message is received. Find us on the web at lylestyle.com. That's LILESTYLE.com. Thank you so much, and enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Coordinating Director with Humanities Team. We are really pleased to be partnered with VividLife Radio. Humanities Team is a spiritual movement whose purpose is to awaken the world to the timeless truth that we are all one, so that humanity's behavior may shift to reflect this understanding. thereby enabling a sustainable world of peace, harmony, and happiness to evolve. Please visit us at www.humanitiesteam.org to find out how you can get involved.
VividLife Radio will connect you to the most current, optimistic, and inspiring stories, current affairs, and research that pertains to opening your mind. VividLife Radio, talk radio that inspires you to live your ultimate life. Go to vividlife.me for more details on all of our upcoming shows.
So welcome back. This is Going Out of Your Mind, and we're talking to Congressman Tim Ryan. And Tim, I just wanted to ask you, obviously, meditation and politics, you've managed to bring them together, and you were saying how you really felt through, even through your Roman Catholic upbringing, that put you in touch with that quiet space within you. But how have you been perceived in Congress? I mean, are there many other politicians who are interested in meditation or mindfulness?
Well, let me first say that it was really interesting as I think back during my campaign, my early campaigns for state senate and then for Congress, very contentious. It was a hardcore Democratic area, but big Democratic primaries. I was the new guy. And I remember taking breaks as I was driving around my district. I got the keys to my church, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Niles, Ohio, and I would just go and sit in the church. And, it wasn't mass or anything, but just go and sit and have quiet time. And looking back, I just remember how really impactful that was on me just to have a point during the day. And I'd sit there for a half hour, 45 minutes if I could, just to decompress, and didn't really realize at the time I was working on my awareness and, letting things flow and not getting too attached to things. But, we had a foundation send 535 books to each member of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And I will tell you that the response has been really startling for me, because I didn't realize the number of people in Congress who are really looking for something, and who have come up to me since then and said, hey, what's this mindfulness stuff? I want you to tell me about it. I want you to teach it to me because, I'm just fried. I got a couple kids. I'm traveling back and forth. I'm raising money. I get stuck in taking positions that maybe I don't necessarily want to take. And they're looking for something. And I think that's really the magic of, this book coming out and the political times that we're in, is that I think we all need to be tolerant in a certain extent of the job that a lot of people have to do, that they're looking for something too. And I think all Americans, whether you're a single mom with a couple of kids or you're a member of Congress, you're looking for something. So to answer your question, it's been extremely well received by Tea Party Republicans and by liberal Democrats. So it's been, as my hope, I didn't write the book as a polarizing book. I wrote it as mindfulness is a human capacity that we all have. It's already there. We don't need to go out and get it. It's a part of who we are. And if that can't help us transcend our politics, nothing can. And it's been very well received.
Well, it's really funny because when you say that, in our book, Be the Change, the Dalai Lama and Robert Thurman, but the Dalai Lama wrote the foreword to our book. So It's very funny. I think you'll appreciate this, and I think the listeners as well. And he writes, in this book, Ed and Deb Shapiro have gathered together the thoughts and reflections of a wide range of people with a variety of experiences in meditation. Anyone interested in meditation should not only read what these people have to say, but also try it out. If you like their suggestions and they are helpful to you, use them. If they aren't, disregard them. Treat this book as you would a cookery book. You wouldn't merely read recipes with approval. You'd try them out. Some you'd like and would use again. Like cookery, meditation only makes sense if you put it into practice.
Wow. That is great. I'm going to steal that.
Well,
That's a great way. And that's what attracted me to mindfulness and John Kabat-Zinn from the very beginning, is it wasn't anything that anybody, I felt, was jamming down my throat. It was try it. See what it's like. You may feel this. You may feel that. You may have this experience. You may have that experience. But try it out. And I think, especially in American society, nobody wants someone to jam something down their throat, philosophically, ideology, whatnot. And I think that's the beauty of what the Dalai Lama said there is, hey, try it out. And that's why he's such an appealing global figure. It's just
probably the world's most famous meditator.
But I have to be honest
no
with you,
question
Tim.
about that.
I have to be honest with you, Tim. We met him on our honeymoon 25 years ago. It'll be 26, and we were sitting with him in his residence, just Deb, me, and the Dalai Lama, and he's holding our hands. And I just said to him, Your Holiness, I don't want to leave. And I thought he would realize how enlightened I was and everything. And he looks at me and he says, if we were together all the time, we would quarrel. And I thought that was so
wonderfully human.
And I realized what it's like, and that's why mindfulness meditation in your book is so important, because we all, even your husband and wife and all the different people out there who are listening, mindfulness meditation, Tim's book is there to help us even live with ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you have to say, Deb?
Well, no, I was thinking that most forms of meditation do take a teacher, that you need to go to somebody to be taught how to do it. So with mindfulness, can people do it on their own? Do they need somebody to teach them?
My personal opinion is that it's nice to have some help. And in the back of a Mindful Nation, there's a resource section, and that includes, guided there's actually Dr. Susan Bauer-Wu from Emory University does a few pages in the back of the book of a guided meditation, both an awareness practice and then also a loving kindness practice. And there's a resource section where you can get turned on to John Kabat-Zinn's guided meditations. I think those are very, very helpful early on, because they just say little things that, everyone says, well, I'm a bad meditator, or I don't know how to meditate.
Absolutely. And we get that all the time.
Sure. And then, you hear the CD and it says, okay, you're having, they interrupt you 5 minutes in, and John says something like, okay, you're probably found your mind's wandering right now. Bring it back to your breath. No big deal. That's going to happen. Of course your mind's going to be going. And of course you're going to, try to count to 10 and follow your breath, and you get to 1 if you're lucky. And then your mind's off dealing with a meeting you had or a meeting you're going to have, and come back, and it's okay. And I think to hear that from somebody, like it's okay, and to have a guided meditation that does bring you back every couple of minutes back to your breath, back to your body, whatever it is that the particular practice is, I think is very helpful. But the thing is, that's a practice. There are moments of mindfulness that you may have when you're in the garden, when you're going for a swim. I ran a marathon a couple months ago and really got into some distance running. And boy, was that a meditation practice. Oh my God. Towards the end, you get the last few miles, and here come the negative thoughts. Boy, I don't know if I could have made it if I didn't have a mindfulness practice, because it was like,
that's really
here come the negative thoughts.
I ski, and when you ski down a mountain, you see, the thing is, a lot of people who do meditation, when you meditate, if you sit down and your mind drifts, then you come back to your breathing and stuff. Well, I skied down a mountain and you're running. If you ski down a mountain and your mind drifts, you might hit a tree.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually why I think, and this is how I wrote the book too. I mean, I wanted people to recognize that there are all of these different moments in your life where you recognize that you're being unmindful, or that you recognize that you're being mindful. The athletic thing of I'm in the zone. Boy, I was in the zone. That's being mindful. Getting in your car and driving 2 miles and not realizing that what you did between the time you left and the time you got there, like, oh my God, I was daydreaming the whole time. That's being unmindful. And so when we cobble together all these personal experiences that happen to us every single day, you begin to introduce to people like, okay, I have awareness, and sometimes I have it, or sometimes I don't. It's like you have balance, and sometimes you lose it, but then you regain it, and you're back. And I think once, we use these examples of, and that's what I felt like the position I was in, and maybe my role in the world, in my life, is to say, hey, I'm a congressman, so I can take this from 10,000 feet or 20,000 feet and say, hey, this can help the military, education, healthcare, sports, leadership, performance, whatever. It's because it's the thing that undergirds everything. It's our awareness, and we all have it. So, how do we get back to it is the question.
Okay.
Well, one of the things is, excuse me, Deb, I want to say, one of the things is, and I really want to make it known to the people who are listening and everything, and you're so an important position. Deb and I have been teaching together for over 25 years all over the world meditation. And we work with corporations, we work with politicians, anybody who comes into our world. And what you're doing, and I really want to make it clear from my heart, because we have trained and written 16 books, it is so important. The work of Tim Ryan must be understood in a very loving and caring way. I've spoken to all sorts of people, but you and even Dalai Lama, when you talk, even your own voice, your whole presence emanates loving kindness, wisdom, and caring. And I really honor that, and I know it's not just sitting there and just sitting there and thinking, well, isn't this great to do? It's a must, and you must be doing this.
Thank you. Well, I tell, and it's been fun to talk to audiences of people who are into mindfulness, and they say, well, why'd you write the book? And the short answer really is, when I went on that retreat, 5-day retreat with John Kabat-Zinn, and 4 days in, we had 36 hours of silence, and I synchronized my mind and my body for a short period of time and really understood the power of mindfulness. There's no going back. I mean, there was no going back to Washington and just debating, more money for Pell Grants or more this or more that, which are all very important, and I don't mean to diminish them in any sense, but there was something so much more fundamental that I wanted to do. And anybody who's been on an extended retreat or anyone who's had a deep practice or had those experiences, no, there's no going back. You can't pretend that your life is something that it's not, because you won't allow yourself, because you tasted something that is so transformational in an awareness of the human capabilities that we have and what it really is, and as John says, what it means to be a human being. And once you really taste that understanding, there's no going back. And so it just happened to be that I was a congressman and involved in politics, and so here we are talking about it. But there was no going back, as many people experience. It's life transforming.
But Tim, has it changed your attitude towards politics or your way of working as a politician?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm less angry. I just, when I was young, obviously you get in Congress and you're 29, you get pissed off at somebody. It's just someone says something and you get mad and you react sometimes out of that anger. I find myself now being a lot more tolerant, a lot more accepting. I feel like I listen more. You'd have to ask my colleagues, what their opinions are of this, but I do feel like I'm more inclined to actually listen. And I do feel like I present, not that I'm backing down. I mean, I think I'm still assertive and presenting my views. I haven't, stopped fighting for the people in Youngstown, Ohio, or Akron, Ohio, who I feel are disadvantaged in so many ways by the current economic and political system. But I think you can do it in a way that is kinder. And I think we saw, when I was watching this too, I don't know if you had an opportunity to see the Democratic convention and see President Clinton.
Of course.
And that to me, and I know I saw an article a few weeks ago that he's practicing meditation now. I know he changed his diet a few years ago and he's a vegan because of his heart issues, but he started practicing meditation. I don't know how long, but I was watching him and I thought, my God, he actually got a round of applause for George Bush at a Democratic National Convention. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's like a magician, a miracle worker. Who else in politics today do you think could go to a Democratic National Convention and get a rounding applause for George W. Bush? I mean, it was incredible. But I think he comes from a place of kindness and obviously maturity, and he's an elder statesman now and all that. But I think we all can learn from that, regardless of what. You don't have to hate the other side, and that's just
as the Dalai Lama would say, and many Christian scholars would say, and Jesus would probably say, you're just bringing more hate to the world. And, you know, like I love the phrase from Mother Teresa, you know, don't ever bring me to I'll never go to an anti-war march, but if you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. And that's kind of the mindset I think we all should try to, and I feel myself moving in that direction. I'm certainly not where I would like to be, but I do feel myself moving in that direction. And I think mindfulness can help, whether you're in politics or a voter, move in that direction.
Well, you know, we teach a workshop, and it's basically, and I think you should teach this to Congress, especially all the people where they're coming from, and basically you just tell them to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, don't just do something, sit there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Tim, I mean, given what you just said about how you've changed, what do you feel would happen if more politicians began to become more mindful and aware?
Well, you know, I'm trying to, as people come up to me and talk about the book, I'm letting them know that, you know, we're trying to assemble a little mindfulness group of people who maybe want to give this a try, no pressure or whatnot. But I actually think this is going to be an organic thing. I think this has to happen, you know, in the cities and villages and townships across America, to where it's organic, to where the constituencies, to where the voters actually become a little bit more mindful and want to elect people who are more mindful. And it's going to be an organic grassroots. There's not going to be a secretary of mindfulness. There's not going to be somebody who's going to do this from the top down, although in some instances that helps. And I want to help, you know, fund research for it and help within the military to get it implemented in schools and whatnot. And I think that's some approach. But ultimately it's going to be, if you have a mindful nation, they're going to elect mindful congresspeople, and they're going to elect mindful senators, and they're going to elect a mindful president. And it's got to come from the grassroots. You know, we can do our part within Congress, and we have to do it, but you need constituents, quite frankly, and I say this in Democratic audiences, and obviously mean it when I speak to Republicans as well. You can't elect a member of the United States Congress and think you're going to agree with them 100% of the time. You guys have been married 26 years.
I agree with you.
If you have a good marriage, you're agreeing with somebody 50-60% of the time, right? That's a great marriage.
Definitely.
So why, in God's name, would you think that you're going to elect someone who represents 700,000 people and they must agree with every one of your political positions from A to Z? That just doesn't make any sense. So my point is that, you know, if there's a touch of mindfulness within our political world, people would say, well, you know, I don't agree with everything the guy does or the woman does, but, you know, she's doing a good job. She works hard. You know, I agree with her 70%. I'll vote for her. Not try to find somebody to run against her in the primary because she voted against you one time. And we've had a bunch, especially in the Tea Party movement, a bunch of people who agreed with the Tea Party like 95 or 99% of the time, or one vote they felt like they didn't, you know, their member of Congress didn't agree with them. And they run someone against them in the primary and beat them. And then you just get a further polarized electorate, a further polarized Congress. So the ultimate point here is that it's got to be infused into our society so that there's a kindness and tolerance and a little bit of awareness and acceptance within the people who are casting the votes for people.
You're like a breath of fresh air. You really, really are, because basically, as they teach, that in everyone there's basic goodness. In everyone. Deb and I teach this in all of our workshops. We always try to bring out the basic goodness, the basic sanity in all people. But the monkey mind, you know how they say that. Your mind is like a drunken monkey bitten by a scorpion.
Exactly.
And so mindful nation, if you can bring that to Congress, if you can Senate, to the whole political arena, that's so important. You would be lifting. So if you are willing to do this, you must agree one thing. You bring Deb and I with you. Because, you know, we can't do it alone. We got married in India. They said 1 + 1 is 11. So the more we come together as a group, just to be sane.
Well, I think as our producer just sent us a beautiful quote that we all probably know but is worth repeating, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has, by Margaret Mead.
Margaret Mead, that's a great quote. I got chills just now because I think it's happening. When you look at, and I'm sure your books highlight this too, but I tried to highlight the pioneers in this revolution, and it's the scientists that I mentioned from all of those universities. It's the people at Google or Target or General Mills that are trying to implement this in corporate America. It's the assistant commandant of the Marines who's saying to Liz Stanley and others saying, how quickly can you train 60,000 Marines? These are people that are part of this quiet revolution. Myself, Phil Jackson, the great basketball coach who taught the Bulls and the Lakers, mindfulness practices and those people associated with that. I just really believe that if we infuse this in the curriculum at medical schools, for example, that those doctors will begin to teach their patients mindfulness, like they're doing at the Cleveland Clinic and other places. I believe that if you train teachers in colleges all across the country that to have a mindful classroom and to teach social and emotional learning and social and emotional awareness, that will be a part of it. And along with the parents who are, sending those kids to those schools. The Marines, the average stay for a Marine in the Marines is like 5 years or 6 years. So those Marines can learn mindfulness and then go back in the communities all over the country. You can begin to see nurses who would need training, family caregivers to the tune of like 60 million people in the country are family caregivers. They need to be able to deal with their stress and everything else. You can begin to see how this can, in a short period of time, I think, get infused into our culture. And
but I teach something more important. I teach something more important than you because I teach it to children. It's called Mickey Mouse meditation.
I was going to come to that after the break.
I'll teach you the little children Mickey Mouse meditation. Where I teach 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds Mickey Mouse meditation.
Well, it's never too young.
Tim,
you'll love it.
Talking about nurses and hospitals and stuff, that you're probably aware, I'm English, and the National Health Service in England has been including mindfulness meditation in many, many of their hospitals and in their training, so that nurses and doctors are receiving that training in many of the training hospitals. And it got out there very quickly, very simply. It may be because it's a smaller country, but it spread very quickly. And so I can see how that could happen here just as easily.
Yeah, no question. I'll tell you, we got $1 million for a grant to put mindfulness and social and emotional learning in our schools in Youngstown and Warren City schools in Ohio, total Rust Belt cities, and it's amazing. But my point is, we had about 30 teachers in the Warren City School District who started, and now they're adding an additional 30 teachers, not because of anything I did or anyone else did, but the teachers started talking to the other teachers about how mindfulness in this SEL curriculum was having an effect on the kids, how they felt differently about themselves and everything else. And that's how it spread. You know why? It makes me feel better. It makes this kid feel better. It makes this poor kid learn better. My God, we have teachers. Everyone. It's in vogue today to beat up teachers and blame them for everything. When those teachers realize that they are touching something beautiful inside themselves, beautiful inside the kids, and it also helps them learn and behave better and have more empathy, they're going to spread that like they're going to be, it's the choir singing, and it's beautiful, and people just gravitate towards that. And I'm assuming that's probably what happened in England as well.
Absolutely, it did. It just spread. One person talking about it becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8. And it just, one person benefiting from it, immediately everyone they come in touch with begins to benefit from it.
Everyone wants a happy life. Every human being wants a happy life.
We're going to have to break again for the moment. We're listening to Congressman Tim Ryan and Going Out of Your Mind.
With Ed and Deb.
We'll be back in just a minute.
Are you a fan of living your ultimate life? Then join thousands of others around the world on Facebook and Twitter for daily inspiration with VividLife. Simply go to vividlife.me and click on the Facebook fan box and our Twitter link.
We all need to go out of our minds at least once a day.
Going Out of Your Mind with Ed and Deb Shapiro is a time to put aside your chattering mind and come into the present moment.
We are irreverent spiritual teachers and have a great sense of humor while exploring what it means to live with integrity, awareness, kindness, and humility.
We will be talking with some of the most luminous people on the planet whose lives you would never have guessed were rooted in meditation and freedom.
As well as us discussing some of the most profound and awakening truths.
Log on to VividLife.me to join us. We guarantee you will enjoy this journey to your heart.
VividLife Radio will connect you to the most current, optimistic, and inspiring stories, current affairs, and research that pertains to opening your mind. VividLife Radio, talk radio that inspires you to live your ultimate life. Go to VividLife.me for more details on all of our upcoming shows.
So we're talking with Congressman Tim Ryan, and this is Going Out
from
of Your
Ohio
Mind with Ed and Deb Shapiro. And just before the break, Ed, you were talking about your wonderful Mickey Mouse meditation for children, and it reminded me, if I can just say that we had our goddaughter here recently who's only 2, and the amount of energy that she expended, she just was flying around the house, running, and it made me think, how on earth can you begin to, how are you teaching mindfulness to children who have such quick minds and so much energy and are so distracted? How do you actually get them to sit down and become mindful?
Are you talking to me or Tim?
To Tim.
I hope she's talking to you, Ed, because I don't have an answer for that.
Well, no. You know what it is that's so beautiful, what Deb is saying, why it is beautiful, and I really have taught it. I had the good fortune of being invited to a Montessori school where I dealt with 2-year-olds and, a bunch of little kids, and, they all want to be happy. So basically I just sit them down, and they love when you're doing that, and you make it a play, and I just go, close your eyes, and you go, MICKEYMOUSE. So if you're energetic, your energy is quiet. If you project peacefulness, everyone knows that. People feel that happiness. That's why interviewing you today is probably one of the greatest joys that we've had on this radio show, because it feels so good just talking with you.
But Ed, you didn't acknowledge the fact that there's probably about 100 adults in this town, if not more, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, well, maybe not 50, but 30 and 40-year-olds, who all practiced Mickey Mouse meditation.
No, don't you dare say that one. Don't you reveal that. I'm not that old. No, there's a lot of kids, and they're up to the 25, 30-year-old, maybe a little bit older. But it's amazing because everybody does want to enjoy it. And that's why the work that you're doing, Tim, is even all those people, even, pardon the expression, but even a murderer, when he kills, he thinks he's being, it makes him happy to think he's doing this. People who do terrible things, it makes them feel good. They think it does. And unfortunately, they're completely wrong. Hopefully, in the truest sense, they certainly are. Because I only believe in thing.
I tell you, Ed, you bring up a good point, because we have been tricked almost in our country to think certain things are going to make us happy. And, we've been living this lie for a long time that the bigger house, the bigger car, the more money would make us happy. In this whole culture of consumerism and materialism, it hasn't worked, the Madison Avenue idea has not worked. And, you see that. Obviously, you hear it with the Dalai Lama. But Pope John Paul had a big encyclical about materialism and consumerism. This is something you see in various religions. It hasn't worked. That's the bottom line. And I weave in and out of my book, Mindful Nation, talk of my grandparents. And I really think they were first-generation Italian Americans. And, my grandfather worked in a steel mill. He was treasurer of his union. He was a steel worker. My grandmother worked for the county. My grandfather got home at 3 o'clock. He would go to his garden. That was the first thing he'd do. He'd go to the garden, work the garden or putz around the house. And, then he would have a happy hour with his brother-in-laws who lived, they lived all within the same kind of neighborhood. They'd have a happy hour. They'd have a couple glasses of wine. They'd spend time with each other. They would talk. They would laugh. They would joke. They did it together, and then they would have a family meal together. And to me, the more I get into practicing mindfulness, it really does and should help us get back to those basic American values. We don't need to create new values. These are basic values of community and togetherness and fellowship. And these are basic values that all people have at some level that are happy. And they didn't have the biggest house. They didn't have, all kinds of fancy cars with elevators or whatever. They just had a basic living. And the most important thing for them was the family and time together. And I think my goal with a mindful nation is obviously the specifics of military, veterans, how do we get in education, how do we get in healthcare, and all these things. But my ultimate goal is how do we all reconnect with these values and therefore create an economy, an energy system that we use in the country that actually gives us what we want. And what we really want is more time with the people we care about. That's ultimately isn't that where we all want to end up? Why we have so much
but
anxiety?
I want to say one thing with you, because this is very important, and you have to say your friends Ed and Deb taught you this, because if you want to use it, you can, but Deb and I teach a workshop. We've taught it with major billion-dollar corporations in Europe and in Thailand, and it's called Beyond the Ferrari. What happens when you have it all and you're not happy?
You're still not happy, absolutely.
I heard a great story from Janice Marciorano, who teaches mindful leadership, in a conference we were at in New York. And she said she was doing a retreat, and I think it was similar to the one I went to, 5 days silent, whatnot. CEO, high-powered CEO, type A, they did a few days, as I remember the story, and she saw him the next day, and he was transformed, and he was telling her the story, and she said, well, what happened? He said, last night I laid in the grass, I looked up, sky was beautiful, and there was a dark sky with a big bright moon. And he says, I realized in all my work and as busy as I have been, I've not seen the moon in 20 years.
Wow.
And I almost started to cry when she told the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are. I mean, come on, like, really? And I think when you peel the whole thing back with the politics and everything else, the anxiety, of tumultuous 2004 election, 6 election, 8 election, 10 election, here we are again in 12, having another. I think it all comes down to this anxiety, economic primarily, of I got to work so much, I'm missing my kid's soccer game. I'm working so much, and I'm not even sure my kid has health care. I'm working so much that I'm getting disconnected from my wife or my husband and my family. Like, that is an anxiety that is being placed on American families all over the country. And once we can just say, stop, okay, how do we create an economy? I'm not talking socialism or communism. I'm just saying, how do we create an economy where you can work hard, play by the rules, make enough money to have a nice family life, to maybe go on a vacation every couple of years, or be able to take a few days off and take your kid fishing? I mean, these are like some basic values, and I think until we get off the treadmill, we're not going to be able to get to that point. And we're going so fast on the treadmill that many of us are afraid to even get off because we don't know what it's going to be like. And I hope a mindful nation will slow us down enough to say, okay, let's reconnect with these values, and let's hopefully enough young people will read it and say, okay, how do we take the next 10 years and really reshape this economy in a way where we realign with those basic values that my grandparents had, primarily how do we get this work hard, take care of your family, self-reliance and individual responsibility and all that good stuff, but how do we get enough time to spend with the people we care about most?
We need a mindful nation in the Pentagon, like a room where people in the Pentagon, mindful nation room, and in colleges, like a place in colleges where there's a place where people can just go in that place and sit, have a moment to just...
Don't they have those already? They're usually
Did they have it in the Pentagon? Yeah.
I don't know. I meet more people. I meet more people that say in government. I just did a talk up at George Mason, and they work for the government. They say, hey, we do a little sitting group in this agency or that agency, and I'm sure there's a few in the Pentagon. It's starting to happen, and we just need to continue to promote it and say, hey, it's okay. We're all going too fast. We're all taking in too much information. We're all dealing with this stuff. So, we asked you 20 years ago that you should start working out. You should go for a run. You should get some exercise, go for a walk or this or that. I think today you need time to sit in the quiet a little bit.
So just coming back to children for a moment, because I know that you wrote an endorsement for Michael Eisen's book about...
Well, that's what our producer said.
Yeah, helping the youth. And I'm just trying to think about children. Obviously, getting mindfulness into schools is partly about teaching the teachers so they don't get so angry or stressed out. But surely it's also about helping the students so they can learn better, so they have greater attention. Is that true? Can we teach the children?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it resonates with the kids when delivered and to them properly. And I think it should be in the colleges of education all around the country. And it should be a part of teacher training, and as they have to update their own credentials, how we continue. I think this should be a main focus for them. And, we now know because of the neuroscience and the field of neuroplasticity that you really can teach kids to calm down a part of their brain that affects their ability to learn. And this was one of the great discoveries when I went on this journey that led to a mindful nation is the neuroscience. So we have this old part of our brain, and I'm sure you guys know this.
Richie
this old
Davidson.
Part of our brain. Yeah, I mean, Richie was the first person I went to meet. I talked to John after the retreat. He said, you got to go meet some of these people. And I went on Super Bowl Sunday in January of 2009 to go see Richie Davidson. Now, that is not what a former quarterback from Northeast Ohio does on Super Bowl Sunday. They don't fly to Wisconsin to go meet with a neuroscientist.
He's in our book. We've done 2 books with him.
He's terrific.
Program with us.
Right. So you meet a guy like Richie, but you realize that we all have this older part of our brain called the amygdala. When it's under stress, it gets really activated. It starts to control things in your brain. And information is only processed in the amygdala when you're stressed out. But unfortunately, you need your prefrontal cortex for learning, decision-making, attention span, balancing your emotions, working memory, all the things that are essential to learning are basically turned off when you're under stress. So you think about the 20 or 30% of the kids who don't graduate from high schools in our country, an ungodly number, and talk about not being competitive with the world. We only have 300 million people in the country. We're competing against China and India, and they've got over 1 billion people. We only have 300 million. We're saying, well, 30% of kids aren't even going to graduate from high school. Boy, what a competitive disadvantage we're at just from the get-go. So mindfulness can teach these kids to calm their amygdala down, which then allows them to access their prefrontal cortex, which gives them all the skills and access to the parts of their brain that they need to learn, math, science, decision-making, empathy, emotions, all the critical things that they need, social and emotional learning. So this is, to me, very fundamental to what the education system needs to look like in the 21st century. Enough of all this smoke and mirrors and all this sexy stuff. We need to get back to basically teaching kids how to take care of themselves. And once they do, you see, like in the social and emotional learning world, a study of a couple 100,000 kids who were involved in SEL programs. There was an 11 percentile increase in their test scores. That closes the achievement gap. And I saw a study the other day, I think it was a 20 or 30 point increase in math scores. So this is very practical. We're not up in the air, in the heavens talking about, esoteric things. We're talking about helping kids take care of themselves, reduce their stress, calm their amygdala down, access their prefrontal cortex, and get better math scores. To me, as a public policymaker, that's
how do
a
people
home run.
reach you? We're almost going off the air, and you must promise to come back. But what is your website? How can people reach you?
Google a Mindful Nation. You can get on my website. I have a website about the book, and we're looking for stories, too, that people have benefited from mindfulness and implementing mindfulness in schools or healthcare, whatever. Send us your stories. We want to continue to promote this. So go to a Mindful Nation, I think it's .com or .org, but just Google Mindful Nation. You'll get our website, and tell me what you're thinking.
I'm on it right now, so it's, I have Ryan.House Government.
That's
my government.
Okay. But anyway, I just want you to promise us, or we're not never letting you get off the show, that you'll come back and talk with us again, because I feel totally inspired and my heart feels joyful. Deb, what do you feel?
I'm beginning to wonder, Tim, the way you're talking. I'm sort of wondering if maybe at some point you're going to become a mindfulness ambassador and forget about politics.
Well, I think there's a lot I can do within the government now, and that's, I think, going to be my role for the foreseeable future. But I love this. I love what I'm doing. I love that, a lot of people thought that this was going to be, people were going to think I was weird, or there was going to, but it's so practical, and there's so many people looking for it. And to have the opportunity to get it into the Defense Department, get it into vets, get it into education, and create systems within these departments
why not
really
have
exciting.
Why not have a department of Mindful Nation, a Mindful Nation department in government?
I think, you know what, Ed, I think that's too narrow, because I want it to be in everything. I want it to be infused in education. I want it to be in the culture, to where whether you're talking about education, veterans, military, healthcare, that mindfulness is a common sense component to all of these things. Wellness, all, like I said, it's infused in everything. It's because it's awareness. You can't bottle awareness up. It's everywhere. And so to put it in a silo like we did, Department of Veterans Affairs, and this is your silo, I think is too limiting for it. And I think it's really exciting that it can be in all of these different things, and really, hopefully, bring our nation back together and help us recapture the American spirit.
So you're inspiring us all.
We've got probably 1 minute left, but I just wanted to ask you, as tomorrow is such a big day for President Obama, has he shown any interest in this?
I gave him my book. He was at Kent State University, which is in my district, and I gave him my book. And I said, hey, I want to give this to you. I wrote it. And he looked at it. He read the title, and he said, this is good. He said, this is, we got to teach kids how to get their minds right, or something along those lines. He understood just from reading A Mindful Nation and a simple practice to help reduce stress, improve performance, and recapture the American spirit, he got it. And so I'm going to work with him and Michelle, hopefully in a second term, to implement this, and like I said, infuse it in everything that's going on.
Oh, Tim,
we're here with you.
You're doing us all a huge, huge favor.
We
Thank
support
you.
We support you, and let's talk again and be in touch, because you brought a lot of joy to a lot of people today. And
well,
you bring joy
Congressman Tim Ryan,
I will definitely come back.
Go out and get it.
Thank you so much. All righty.
Bye-bye.
Joy.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.
Good luck along the way.
Well, certainly for so many of us. I mean, it is important times. So many lives are dependent on some sanity. I have to say there are times I feel it's not like I'm a Democrat or a Republican. I want some sanity. If we could have anyone who can come forward and really care about the people. And that's why I feel so strong about Obama, and I feel strong about you. I do want to start with something, and I know I might be jumping the gun, but I would love to see you in that direction towards being President of the United States. That's what we need.
Well, it looks like I'm going to have a lot more gray hair if that's the case, huh? Because that's what happens, and we see that.
Well, that's not too bad because I'm bald.
All right. Well, there you go.
Really, you could be the first bald president. Why not?
Well, there you go. Right. There's always a first, right? But
I have one particular. I have one particular question. It's basically that it's a strong one. You're a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and yet you are the author and the brilliant author behind Mindful Nation. So it's sort of like, people who are really in Mindful Nation, people who are aware and all, how do you balance the two of, the armed service? We always think this is where, people want to create war or something. Can you enlighten us on that?
Well, that's a very interesting part of this whole thing. And, quite frankly, in my experience, and I'm not a mindfulness teacher or anything, I do have my own personal practice for a few years now. But part of it is really facing conflict and facing the things that you may not like, whether it's about yourself or your country or a relationship you're in. It's a lot of times has to do with being able to deal with that. And, I get this question a lot on the book tour and everywhere about, how do you reconcile this? And really, to me, there's so many different aspects of our military. There are young kids that go in that are looking to serve their country and do good things, sometimes put in very precarious situations that they ultimately and sometimes don't know how to deal with, and they're in it for all the right reasons. And I think, mindfulness to me, as far as my first introduction into trying to get it into the military and to veterans, is to help them. First on the front end with a program that Liz Stanley's running out of Georgetown. It's called Mind Fitness, and that's really to increase resiliency for the soldiers and Army officers who are going in, and people who are really on the front line, just to try to give them some mental resiliency, so when they go into these difficult situations, they don't get worse. We have Marines, for example, who one day are in a firefight and they are doing their duty and their lives are on the line. They may lose a couple of their buddies along the way. The next day, they're in a patrol in a civilian village. And I think where mindfulness can come in and the mind fitness training can come in is to say, hey, this happened yesterday. It was a very difficult situation. But if I bring too much of that into today, if I'm not in the present moment.
Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
So, hello, welcome. This is Ed and Deb Shapiro at Going Out of Your Mind. This is an exciting time in our country. We're in the middle of a heated political election with the first presidential debate tomorrow, and this is probably one of the most important times in political history. Politics seems to be steeped in a lot of misguided information, ignorance, even unawareness. But finally, we have a congressman who is bringing mindfulness and awareness not only into politics but into every single aspect of American life. And his extensive imagination includes education, the Army, hospitals, even prisons. So, our guest today is Ohio Democrat Congressman Tim Ryan.
And just before he goes on, I do want to say that Congressman Tim Ryan is a Democrat from Ohio. Right now, Ohio, from what everybody hears, is the key to the election. So let us joyfully say hi to Tim Ryan.
Hi, Tim.
It's great to be with you guys.
I think it's good, yeah.
Hi. So you're one of Ohio's youngest state congressmen, because you were elected in 2002 and are now in your fifth term. That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, we got started a little early. Was elected to the state Senate in 2000, and then U.S. Congress in 2002. So just a lot of serendipity and a lot of if I haven't figured out how to maybe deal with some of that stuff, today can actually be very tragic, and there can be civilians involved in this. So, how do we train our soldiers? We're not in it, and I have no interest in teaching people how to be better killers, but it's about how they can handle these different situations. And what we're finding out, too, is that if you help them in their training, build up their resiliency, do their mind fitness, have a mindfulness practice, that they actually bounce back better from some of the trauma that they may face. And so, with all these soldiers coming back, the high rates of suicide among veterans who are returning, this can be very, very helpful for them and ultimately help us reduce some of our costs that we're going to be spending over the next couple of decades on veterans' health care.
Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
So we're just, for our listeners to know, we're talking to Congressman Tim Ryan, who is the author of A Mindful Nation, How a Simple Practice Can Help Us Reduce Stress, Improve Performance, and Recapture the American Spirit, which I think is a glorious title, and he's enlisting professionals of all types in a quiet revolution to take up mindfulness. Now, what do you mean by a quiet revolution, Tim?
Before you say that, I love that. What was that Debbie said? Something?
To recapture the American.
Recapture, to think that we actually have to recapture it is mind-blowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so what is a quiet revolution, Tim, and how is that mindfulness?
Well, it's, obviously a play on words that the practice of mindfulness is about really quieting your mind and appreciating the silence that exists sometimes, and how that can open your awareness up to what you're thinking, what other people are thinking, what's really going on in the present moment. I talk a lot about how athletes are in the zone, and how mindfulness basically is a way to get yourself in the zone. We see peak performers and we say, wow, how do they do that? And they're really in the zone. Their mind and their body are in the same place. They're synchronized, and they're in the zone. And I think there's a quietness that when you watch the Olympics, for example, a few weeks ago, or you watch a high-performing athlete, they're actually coming out of a silent place. And so that's one way of talking about the quiet revolution, but also that it's happening under the radar screen right now. This is not happening in a way that is on the nightly news or that everyone's talking about. I mean, it's happening more and more that people are actually getting the word out, but really it's under the radar screen. And when you read A Mindful Nation, you'll see the scope of how this is happening from coast to coast, from UCLA to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to University of Miami in Florida, Amherst, Harvard. I mean, it's happening everywhere, the Cleveland Clinic. But it's happening under the radar screen, and so that's this is kind of a quiet revolution, but I don't know how quiet it's going to be in the next few years, because it's really grown in popularity, and I think people are really looking for something to help them, and so a lot more people are open to this. So I like the phrase "quiet revolution," though. I think it's really cool.
So how did you first get interested? Because this is a big jump from being a politician, and not many of them make that jump. How did you first get interested?
Well, I think it's been years and years of dealing